Hey everyone, welcome to week 35. This is day 5, last day of the week. This is our only Earth's week. I was going to say all Earth's week again. This is our only Earth's week. And what we try to do during the week is actually kind of incline the palette towards one area of the palette. So on Monday, we did an earthy painting, kind of neutral painting. On Tuesday, we did a reddish painting. On Wednesday, we did a yellow painting. Yesterday, I painted a self-portrait, very gray, very mid-tone heavy, the way I kind of like to paint myself. I really like that painting. And today, I think I'm going to do a very gray, very almost monochromatic with an accent of color painting. And I think it's going to be really cool. So remember, next week, new theme. So we'll see you guys next week. Thank you. Okay, let's get started. Now, this is going to be our last day for our Only Earths week. And I think it's been awesome. You know, fundamentally, what we've been trying to do is, yes, we started the week by recognizing that there were a bunch of these earth tones that I was attracted to, you know, throughout the years. There was this natural desire to learn about these earth tones, to use them. And I don't know, life happened, you know. I don't have a good explanation of why I didn't end up using them. I think that I was overwhelmed by them. You know, I bought so many of them. They are so strange. Each of them has its own kind of personality, all these like different qualities that are inherent to them that I don't know. I was probably in a path where I was seeking simplicity like I do right now. I want to paint simpler. And at that point in time, I'm talking about maybe 15 years ago, I probably had to just take colors out of my palette instead of adding colors that I knew nothing about. You know, I had to start by using very, very simple colors. So if I could use something that had very little saturation, I would use it. And that's how I started constructing my palette, with very simple terms. And I just added more complex opportunities throughout the years. But it was a very slow process. And that doesn't mean that I have to start with an earth palette, that would have been obvious back then. You know, back then I was also interested in having accents in saturation. That's why Cad Red has always been part of my palette. I don't think I've ever taken it out of my palette. So I've always wanted to have the opportunity to express through saturation, through high chroma. And it wasn't just about saying, yeah, let's just take all these crazy colors out, all this crazy saturation out. Let's start with these very kind of humble earth tones and let's work our way towards saturation. No, I wanted to deal with saturation. So that's why I kept some of those colors throughout the years. So in a way, I kind of know that I was going to go back to them at some point, that I was going to have this conversation at some point. I'm very, very glad that I was able to have it in this context, you know, as part of this project, because I am in a mindset where I'm putting myself in a painting practice, in a painting ritual almost, where I am super open to what is going on every single time I sit down and paint. And what's more important is that after every painting I finish, I try to compare those paintings, those efforts, with past efforts. And I try to say, well, what can I do in the future that helps me build upon the things that I have learned from those past experiences? So I'm very happy that I gave myself the opportunity to say, okay, now it's time to go back to those earth tones and just look at them with a new perspective. Not just the idealized version of this earthy palette that I connected with Renaissance, high Renaissance, Baroque painting, which I absolutely adore, but seeing earth colors for what they are, just trying to strip the meaning out of them, and then just seeing them as pigments and how they work together, you know, as this more complex composed palette. So I'm very, very happy with that. For today, we are finally saying goodbye to our, you know, and this is the last time I'm going to say it. I swear, I promise you. I'm not James Browning this. I'm not going to fall, and I don't expect people to help me up. I do think this is the swan song of the transparent yellow oxide lake. I think it's a wonderful color. I really do. I mean, I love that it has that stench that we've talked about, that beautiful, beautiful stench. But I just think that it's a little too weird to be part of my palette. I think that I'm trying to be respectful to it also, and I'm acknowledging that I'm not really going to use its properties to its fullest. So if I know that it is a lake, if I know that it is a transparent oxide, I should be treating it as a transparent color. That doesn't mean that I have to glaze with it all the time. That doesn't mean that the only way I should use it is by thinning it down with a medium, just stretching it with a medium, or, covering a very light color just so it shows its brightness. No, I mean, obviously I can use it in an opaque manner. And I have done that throughout these days, but I feel that, I don't know, I don't quite connect with it. I can paint with it, but there's enough things about it that turn me off. And I really feel that, I don't know, that it's not necessary in my palette, that it wouldn't really be indispensable in my palette. And I'm at a point in my painting that if that color is not really working hard at giving me something that all my other colors can give me, then it's redundant. Then I would have it in my palette just for show, but I wouldn't really be utilizing it to its fullest potential. So I acknowledge that. I am conscious of that. I'm honest with myself when I see that. And I told myself, okay, let's do this kind of cool exercise. Let's take it out. I've been talking so much crap about it. Let's take it out and let's see if I can replace it with raw sienna, a color that I also acknowledge that is weak. I have shied away from using that color, and I've had many opportunities to really use it, and I've always ended up rejecting it or saying, well, it's not doing it for me. And I've taken it out of my palette because I feel it's a weaker pigment. I feel that it doesn't really show up in my mixes. I kind of see it and I feel it's there. But if I think of every other color that I have in my palette, they always show up. Titanium white shows up, bismuth yellow shows up, cad red shows up, alizarin shows up, raw umber shows up, and cobalt ultramarine or ultramarine, they show up. Like, all of those colors, when I really think about it, when I need to call upon them, they show up. If I need something altered in my mix and I call them, I see it immediately. Like, it's there. The effect is there. Raw sienna, I don't know. It's a little too quiet. It's a little too shy. Nothing wrong with being shy or quiet. That's actually me. But in a color, like, I expect more of it. I kind of wanted more from it. So I took it out. So what we did today, it's a really nice experiment because, I have on the one hand this color that I don't like, that I just honestly don't connect with, that I reject, which is the transparent yellow oxide lake. And on the other hand, I have this color that I recognize its beautiful qualities, but I think that it's a little too underwhelming for me. I need it to have a little more personality. I mean, not as loud and not as much as that, shrieking yellow oxide, but I need a little more from my raw sienna. So for today, I took out my yellow oxide lake and I replaced it with raw sienna. I was like, okay, raw sienna, it's your time to shine. You have to make me love you once again. You have your work cut out for you because you are coming right after I've had these weird experiences with this yellow lake. So all you have to do is just be this noble, really nice color, and we can start having a conversation once again. And you know what? Maybe all I needed was to have a couple of opportunities to paint with this very strident color that's the yellow lake, to go back to the raw sienna and say, hey, you're not that bad, you're a nice guy, you're a nice dude, very homely. It's like soup. It's like painting with a nice kind of savory, homely soup. Raw sienna, the chicken soup of colors. It's not going to wow you, but if you're hungry, it's going to do its job. It's going to fill your belly. You're going to have a good night's sleep. Absolutely perfect. If you have $1 and if there's a corner deli shop, probably going to get some chicken soup, you're golden. That's raw sienna. I realized that. I was like, hey, you know what? If I had to pick between the two of you, I would pick raw sienna for sure. This weak pigment that I thought wouldn't have a place in my palette because it kind of lacked personality. I was like, I'd much rather have you, dude, than this guy that I've been tolerating for these past couple of days. And what's most beautiful about it is that, yeah, raw sienna doesn't leave that trace behind where you can kind of feel that transparent color kind of staining your mixes. That's what kind of happens with this oxide lake. Raw sienna doesn't do that. It's just a natural earth tone, so it just really won't do that. And there's this beautiful kind of natural subtlety and transparency to it that is not going to let it kind of show up like that. Again, leave that stink behind. And so we got rid of that. And what we have, even though it's of a lesser saturation, is a beautiful earthy yellow hue that can completely be used. It can totally be used. I would have probably never been able to paint some of the things that I painted on Wednesday with Fera's painting if I didn't have that yellow lake, because that little bit of saturation actually showed up as accents in that final painting. I like that. I have to say, I honestly have to admit that I like that those tiny little accents, especially like that little bit of color, a little bit of yellow floating in the background. The fact that those showed up made me appreciate the saturation that's inherent to that lake color. But I don't know, grayness is actually far closer to my personality. And I'm grateful that I had the opportunity to look at raw sienna today. And just by comparing it and contextualizing it with that yellow lake and saying, okay, how are you similar and how are you different? It made me appreciate the fact that it is weaker, that it is more quiet, that it's not as loud as this other color. It doesn't have to be the star. It doesn't have to make a scene. It is just there. And it's doing its job, and it's doing it just quietly and humbly. And that was cool. That was very, very cool. I was able to appreciate it for what it is. Now, in this painting, I don't know if I'm pushing the yellow. I realized that I had a weaker yellow, so I wasn't going to try to push the yellow hue. I think that this painting is probably a little bit closer. Even though there is yellow in the background, it's a little bit closer to what we did with Manu's painting on Tuesday, where there's this really nice relationship between a cooler part of the painting and the bottom part of the painting, obviously with a darker mask, that's Keith's cat. But then in the upper part of the painting, there's this beautiful kind of harmony of cooler reddish relationships. And I really, really liked the transition that I got from going from the reds in the upper part to the cooler, bluer, let's call them bluer, quote unquote, hues that I got in the bottom with my Castle Earth. So I think I went back to those relationships that we had established on our second day. I think they were really nice for this painting. I noticed how there's something beautiful and very congruous about analogous palettes, about palettes that are very close in nature. And this is never more true than when we work with an earth palette. I mean, you can't generate relationships. You can't generate mixes within that palette that are going to feel off. Nothing is going to feel dissonant. There's nothing that's going to want to step out of the painting. If you have colors, if you're working with colors that are so close together that they harmonize just by their very nature of being earthy, it's really nice because the whole painting feels like you could take it from one place to another. You could stretch the painting from one area of the palette to another, from one hue to another. You could do a whole journey that goes from greener grays, bluer grays, redder grays, orange grays, and they all stick together. It's the most beautiful thing. So I was very grateful to see that earth part of the palette really does connect the palette beautifully. That was a very nice reminder. I mean, this is something that I think I know, but the fact is that I don't really use a bunch of earths in my palette, so I never have the opportunity to experience those things. Again, the most beautiful thing about doing these daily paintings is that we grant ourselves the opportunity to say, hey, I haven't really explored this ever, maybe, or I haven't done this consciously for the longest time. Let me take a week. Let me take a week off from my regular painting to experience this. Nothing wrong can come from this. Nothing bad can come from this. Like, at the end of the week, we can either say, oh my God, this was an incredibly enlightening experience. I want to introduce some of these palettes into my painting practice. And that's awesome. That's actually perfect. Or you can say, hey, this was awesome, but I love my, regular colors, because now I can understand contextually, when I compare them with a wider gamut of colors, what my regular colors can do. And I miss it. Working with this earth palette made me miss my regular colors. So now I'm going to be more grateful that I have them. Now I'm going to acknowledge more the beautiful things that they offer me. And I'm hopefully going to take more advantage of those properties. So again, doing these things is wonderful. Like, we shouldn't feel threatened about questioning our palette or questioning our choices. If anything, it's a perfect opportunity. It should never feel threatening, where we put ourselves in a situation where we just learn, where we are vulnerable, we open up and we learn. And I know that that can be scary. And I know that confronting ourselves with our abilities, with our knowledge or lack of knowledge, is something that can be really, really scary. But come on, this is our life. We want this to be our partner for life. We want to have painting be our company for the rest of our lives. Why not build something, with honesty? And why not just look at ourselves with pure, honest eyes and say, hey, I don't really understand my palette. I don't understand these colors. I use them because I inherited this manner from a teacher 20 years ago, and I'm supposed to be using them like this. And that's the only thing I heard. And I just believed it to be true. But, you're never too old, and it's never too late to question those things. And it's never too late to learn. That was it for this week. It was a really awesome ride. I had great experiences with colors that I clearly didn't connect with, that I know I'm not going to use, at least in the near future. And today was a very nice reminder that even though a color that I've always understand as secondary, as something that is like second fiddle, you're not doing much for me, so I'm going to put you aside, like raw sienna. I told myself, come on, give this dude a chance. Bring raw sienna into the palette and say, it's your time to shine, dude. So come on, show me. And today it showed me that it doesn't have to wow me. It doesn't have to be loud. It doesn't have to scream. But it was there, and it was doing its job, and it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful. So yeah, out with the lake, and we're going to embrace raw sienna. I'm not going to put it in my palette, going to be honest. It's not like I'm saying, hey, raw sienna, come be part of our family. No, he hasn't earned it yet. I'm sorry. You're invited to the party, but just leave early, please. So I'm not going to quite put it in my palette, but I'm going to be more open to it, and I'm not going to judge it as much, because I was being judgy with raw sienna before, I think. I'm being extra judgy with that yellow lake, but I don't care, because that color is horrible. So goodbye, good riddance. Anyways, that was it for today. It's Friday, so as we say on every Friday, Danny and I thank you from the bottom of our hearts, because you guys are awesome. Your support is just absolutely invaluable to us. So thank you so much. And we invite you for next week. Next week, we're going to do a super cool exercise next week. I think it's going to be super fun. It's going to give us a chance to play with the palette a lot more. It's going to have an impact in what our painting looks like. Every single day is going to be different. So it's an invitation. Come visit us next week and check out our videos. So thank you. We'll see you guys next week. New theme. Bye.